outside of the school day. Mrs. Yetto has been known to orchestrate help and share resources with families starting over after losses. As one appreciative parent has stated, it takes a special human to work at a school. It takes an amazing human to care outside of her role at school. We are pleased to recognize Mrs. Yetto's caring and compassion for Johnstown families, which goes above and beyond the call of duty. Congratulations.
We're always welcome to say something if you like.
Okay. Okay, next we have Jackie Whitman, who is a special education teacher at Pleasant Avenue Elementary, where her colleagues say she is the first person to volunteer for anything, often asking how she can help and offering assistance to other staff members throughout the day. She also volunteers at many after-school activities like Literacy Night and goes the extra mile to ensure that special education students are fully included in the Pleasant Avenue culture and community. She is described by coworkers as kind, considerate, fun, engaging, and knowledgeable. Jackie's colleagues also say she has an ability to recognize student needs and behaviors, and that she regularly uses this ability to transition children through difficult situations that arise during the day. Mrs. Whitman's efforts to support the staff and students around her are truly appreciated as going above and beyond the call of duty. Congratulations to Ms. Whitman.
Congratulations. Yeah. Would you like to say anything? You're welcome to, if you like.
Just a quick note of gratitude, because I wouldn't have this position and I wouldn't be here with the amazing team and the amazing staff that support us all the way through. So it is greatly appreciated. Fairly new to the district, but I've never felt so much love and support. And the teamwork and the working with the other staff and students is because of the people that are there. So without them, I wouldn't be here. Thank you.
Okay, so next we have Sean Russo, who is a social studies teacher at Johnstown High School and has served for several years as the volunteer advisor for the Johnstown Equality Alliance Club, creating another avenue for students' voices to be heard. Among the many opportunities Mr. Russo provides for his students each year, he travels to New York City with a group of seniors from his Advanced Placement Politics, Leadership, and Economics course, otherwise known as APPLE. So they may compete in the We the People competition, where students create speeches that answer rigorous questions about the U.S. Constitution, government, and current events, and then answer questions posed by a panel of judges. Mr. Russo spends months helping students prepare for this competition, which provides a college-level experience. Mr. Russo's persistent efforts to prepare his students for their futures are recognized as going above and beyond the call of duty. Congratulations, Mr. Russo.
So I appreciate all the support I had, Mr. Hale with GJSD and Board of Education, and Mr. Crenshaw, I really appreciate it, and helping make We the People possible. Coming into my classes to helping judges as well as helping them to pay for it, because I think it really is a good opportunity for those kids. Thank you very much.
Remember, I hired you too.
What?
I hired you too.
I know you did. I appreciate that.
So why don't you guys slide down this way a little bit and have a little photo. Right down this way.
Right here. Do you want us or not? Happy days.
No, you're good.
Another way.
Very good. Okay, so next on the agenda will be Dr. Crankshaw's presentation on the budget. And and this includes a presentation of all budget components. So take it away, Dr. Crenshaw.
Kevin, give you one more chance to lead. We've done, just for the audience's benefit, we've done this presentation now since October. And so it's a cumulative presentation. By now, you sort of have the entire budget in its draft form. So next month, we ask the board to adopt the budget proposal. And so this is where we are tonight. So I thought I'd give you a little background. And to the board, I asked Will Stock to give me the,
Keep it moving.
if that's necessary, but what you see here is pretty much what we would have for the hearing. And if you have any suggestions, please stop me if you have any comments, because what we see here has been introduced, I think, to the Audit Budget Finance Committee, to the full board. I think you got a copy of this very presentation just last week. And so there should be nothing new, but we'll go through it. And I think we will start with looking at the draft expenditures again, because we know that the legislative bodies came out with their recommendations today. So our Assembly and our Senate, they don't always agree, so now this period of negotiation, hopefully by April 1st, we'll have the real budget that we're going to run and use to finalize our budget. But we always start with district goals and a quote to remind ourselves that whatever we're spending here in the district really reflects the values we have for education in our community. So onward to expenditures. So right now, the draft expenditures, we are looking at a budget from this year to next at about a 2.93% increase. And we really are making a goal, conscious goal, to be between 2 and 3%, if necessary. Next year, we're already talking about the budget. We'll start to propose in that budget. We'll take a really hard look at what we're funding, what is new, and what we feel we really need to keep, and some of those things that we might need to let go of. So, all in context of multi-year long-range planning. So 2.93% increase year to year. Also, our revenues, and I think the board is well aware of that by this time, that state aid is relatively stagnant year to year. We have a 2.57% increase. Our federal aid is absolutely stagnant. Tax levy is something on the minds of everyone, and to help fund our budget, about a third of it comes from our community. And we're looking at a 4.47% tax levy increase, which is a simple majority. It is the maximum allowable tax levy limit that we can go out to our voters with. And that is also part of our long-range planning to make sure that we have a tax cap formula year to year that can work to fund the budget. Appropriated fund balance, we try to be careful here. I think one problem that districts run into is when it has fund balance, obviously it's there to spend, but we also don't want to fill gaps in our budget that are significant year to year. And I think what we'll try to do each year is spend a little bit less, appropriate a little less out of our fund balance, and that's why you see that drop from $150,833. However, you do see a planned use of reserves again this year to the tune of $900,000 coming from the workers' compensation and ERS. So those are two reserves which we planned in advance according to our reserve plan to use. We have interfund transfer and other revenue, and we've explained that the revenue is being income from pilots. So, and we've talked about pilots to a little bit, but from pilots, tuition, but BOCES reimbursements at the end of the year, money that we budgeted, we didn't spend, get back in refunds, and also BOCES rentals. As you know, we have Fleet Street rented out, that's an example of all that. So we did go into a little bit more detail about state aid, explaining that a little bit further. Foundation aid is one to keep your eye on. Foundation aid is about 3% increase this year. It's typically around 2%, but our foundation aid is the core of the state aid that we can expect to receive. And we're fortunate to have 3%. Neither legislative body is proposing anything beyond that. So they're taking the governor's budget and they're using it. So 3% is all we can expect. 2.57% increase in state aid overall. And then, of course, for the public, I would go into more detail about what each of those states really mean. We've moved early in the fall to an administrative component of our budget, which represents under 10% of our entire budget. That includes the Board of Education, Central Administration, and so on. No changes to this administrative component, just over 2% increase. Really reflecting a change and increase in salary benefit. A little bit of explanation about the administrative component of the budget. Overall, this is a nice picture. Just to remember that administrative component of the budget, this is percentage, capital, just under 20%. A program where we spend most of our money and our time, our blood, sweat, and tears. Program component is just under 75% of our total budget. We moved then around early winter time to the capital component of the budget, and we explained how we proposed the increase to the capital component at about 4.23%. Most of that due to increases in salary, benefits again. Maintenance of plant was a new line. That increase of $107,000 includes a $100,000 line item for maintenance to do those things that we know we need to do, that we necessarily can't wait for a capital outlay project on or a major capital project. And debt service has an increase of about 4.73%. Looking at those capital changes in some detail, already explained. I'm going to skip on here if you don't mind. Capital, reminder that's capital outlay as part of this budget again, and I will propose that every year. It's a $100,000 project. Legislation, and actually the Senate, I believe the Senate, the Assembly, and even the governor is behind a $250,000 capital outlay project, which makes a lot more sense, because you could do a lot more with $250,000 rather than $100,000. So stay tuned. For now, it's $100,000. Now, as we move on to the program component, we've already spent some time on this. Roughly just under 75% of our budget, looking at construction, the largest part of that. Increases due again to salary and benefits. I've got a couple of slides to explain a couple of positions in there that are new for this proposal for next year. District transportation, interfund transfers, employee benefits. The total of 2.68% increase program. We keep in mind, Alicia and I, and certainly principals and all the directors, we're keeping in mind that ARP grant and what that supports and funds. It is a concern to us, but we knew this in advance coming into budget. So we're already thinking about how we can sustain those programs that we really feel we need to keep. We will be taking a very close look, harkening back to my comment when we first started. So we're already looking at next year's program, how we can sustain what we have. So the draft component program budget is there in front of you. We explained some of those increases that might be seen as substantial in salary, non-salary benefits. I thought this was important. I made a misstep, I think, last month, and I said I was a little confusing, I think, about some of the positions in this budget as compared to this current budget. So I just want you to know that what we have in our current budget are the pieces on the left. We always build in contingency positions because one never knows we're going to, and I told you this last month, I think, you never know when you're going to need an extra section of third grade, what do you do? But it comes on us sometimes, a special education classroom, and so on. We do always budget continuing positions. But new in this particular budget is the senior typist, which is essentially people we look at as a secretary, administrative support for the director of transportation that we hope to create, and for Mr. Wood as director of facilities. Capital projects are a huge effort and a lot of training, so I think bringing that particular support on at this time is really relevant. District always had this person. We would like to propose it in this budget. And also the director of transportation is in here. It's also on the board agenda, under the consent agenda, I believe, as a creation of position. Now that all comes with the desire to take more control of our transportation, and it's a cost that we would incur as we're not going to be having that expense from BOSIS. And don't forget, all of our transportation expenditures have a 90-cent in the dollar return. So we're really paying 10%. So it's not a huge lift to fund the director of transportation if we're not also duplicating that in BOSIS services, plus the aid back. You're familiar with the transportation safety plan. If you're okay, I can gloss for this, because the transportation safety plan, you know that we have buses to purchase. There's some legislation out there, proposed legislation with electric buses, lots of unknowns. The legislators, clearly are trying to peel that back a little bit. We'll see what happens. This is the organization that I work with and represent. We want to hold it scrap for now because it needs to be thought through. It's not that we don't think electric buses are no emissions is not a good idea, but here's our plan. Each year we had a plan to purchase between 2 and 3 buses each year. And since this is the 23-24 school year, we had plans to purchase 2 buses rather than 3, not knowing how this legislation is going to pan out, not knowing how our transportation service is going to be, approached in the near future. Again, we have gone over these. They're there for you to take home and reflect on and read. But we always want to keep the ARP funded positions at the forefront. And how much money they are utilizing and for what reasons. A reminder in the next slide that we have recurring federal grants that we can expect every year. That's different than the ARP grants. And we also have to be mindful of that, because when we receive federal grant money, if they dry up some year, we already fund some positions for that too. So we've always got to be mindful of how we're funding the positions we have. We're grateful for the federal support, but federal government's funding right. We've had a recent expansion of UPK. We're looking forward to maybe that happening again. This is just an explanation of some of the things we're continuing and some of the efforts we have ongoing. Universal pre-K expansion. We have 3 solid full-day programs moving toward primary school next year. Comprehensive instructional plan. I'll mention that in my board report today. Long-range financial planning. I want to thank you for coming together March 9th to take a look at some of that long-range planning. I also want to thank you for coming to Tim's spot on, because he's very much the same guy every single time he presents, but his talk is partly the reason why Alicia and I behave the way we do, and I'm always looking toward the future. Rick has been a mentor to me for the past 12 years, and so if you want to know why I am the way I am financially, it's because of Rick. Because he helped my first district out, pulled us right out of the doldrums. We were about to close doors. He helped me in Cooperstown. He helped me do the same thing. That was our budget. And I think his thoughts and strategies go a long way with us. Other improvements we're making, just to remind you, we do have a small capital project ongoing right now. I'm not sure if it's accomplished. this summer. We're looking forward to the track being replaced. There's also some work in the pit of the elevator here in us. We decided to include when we knew that we couldn't also fund the fence completely. We do have some fence options. That's going to move into the medium capital project, which is that next column. We have an EPC project ongoing, medium capital project. Right now, we are still marrying the scope of the medium capital project and the EPC. We're really close. And I just want to look at my notes real quick about those capital projects. This slide 35. Here we go. You know, actually, I'd go through this if I report for too, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Bus purchase, we looked at, we're going to have a proposition on the bus purchases, budget, and also the Board of Education seats. I think we have 2 3-year seats up at the end of this year. We're moving to 7 members next year. This year we have 8. Just a reminder. Here's the draft budget summary, which you've seen before. We've also ahead of time completed the contingency budget. If this were voted down this budget, or the contingency budget, that's how the board decided to move. What it means to have a contingency budget, what that looks like, and we're looking forward to May 16th. We're working on the publications right now to send to homes, working on the content with BOCES, capital region BOCES, and I think we're on target for all those things. And there you go. Okay. Thanks very much for your attention. Thank you, Alicia, for all your help.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Frank Shaw. All right, so we will move on to the next item in our agenda, comments from the public on agenda and non-agenda items. The Board of Education welcomes district residents, parents, students, and other people to our meeting. Community involvement at board meetings is encouraged so that we can better understand your views. Please be aware that individual student information or particular personnel issues will not be discussed by this board during public session. When recognized by the board president, please state your name and address. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Speakers will be notified by the board president when their time has expired. When speaking, the public shall direct their comments to the board and not the district staff or other audience members. Speakers shall not expect board members to answer questions during public comments. Questions shall be referred to the superintendent or his or her designee for review, study, and response. If appropriate, the board may request the issue be a discussion item at a future Board of Education meeting or Board of Education committee meeting. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board this time? We have one gentleman in the back who raised his hand first.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah. All right, so my name is Rodney Skyler. I live at 516 North Market Street here in Johnstown, New York. And I'm here to talk today about the issue of adding a school resource officer to the Greater Johnstown School District. So what do I do? So I work as a history teacher over at HFM Tech. I've been there for 4 years. Prior to that, I served at the Albany City School District as a middle school teacher. So I can't speak for the teachers at Johnstown High School because I'm not there. However, I am at a school. We serve 11 districts in this community. And I understand there are several challenges facing, especially post-COVID and such. The 3 largest challenges that I see with our students are serious mental health issues, truancy, and frankly, just a very large lack of motivation trying to get back to traditional school. And so with that in mind, it's my belief that for a school in a community with a very limited budget, we should be careful about how we decide to spend those things. I believe our students need support. I believe we need more counselors, social workers, school psychologists, essentially trusted adults that our students can go to for support to kind of help them through that. I feel thankful that the school I work at functions quite well. We are facing a lot of those challenges, and we have some challenges every single day, but we have excellent counselors, support staff that they can lean on, and that I can lean on to help me do my job in the classroom and help our students feel supported. And while, you know, I was here last month, and while I heard great ideas about how perhaps a police officer in a school could indeed be a friend, a mentor to students, right? I think we really need to keep in mind that that is not their job. That is not the primary role of law enforcement. They are exactly that, law enforcement. And which, of course, has its role in society, absolutely. However, I feel with the challenges facing our students, our communities, our teachers, we're bringing a hammer to something that needs support, a more proactive approach. And hearing the cost that would be incurred on the school district if we decide to take on this burden is about what a mid-career teacher would make, right? And then we also heard the police chief mention bringing a second one, already kind of undone. So we're talking almost 6 figures potentially out of our school budget to pay for a hammer, when that is not what our students need. I believe, again, those funds could be much better used, school counselors, psychiatrists, social workers, etc., to help with the mental health challenges of our students, the truancy issues, and sort of lack of motivation and such. So I won't speak much more, but I just wanted to voice my concerns that I hope we can meet our students and their challenges with support and not force. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would wish to address? Yes, sir.
Dick Baker, 1604 State Highway 67, Johnstown. I saw what I want to talk about quickly on the board agenda, and I just couldn't let it go. I see that there's going to be 2 propositions on the election thing. One, to buy the school buses, which I believe you have to do because the money's coming out of the bus reserve fund. You do that every year. But what piqued my interest was you're taking $129,000 and the rest out of budgeted funds, it says. Why? What? Because in the next one, it says that there's $1,145,413 in the bus reserve fund. Why wouldn't you take it all out of the bus reserve fund? Why would you take only $129,148 out of the bus reserve fund and the rest out of the budget? I don't understand, because then going back 20 years, 25 years, they created the bus reserve fund. We ended up with a whole lot of money one year. There was a situation that had arisen, that there were some problems with one of our building projects with just paperwork with the state and that. They withheld a bunch of state aid over a number of years. Then all of a sudden they said, okay, everything was legit, but the way the state works, they gave the school district $5 to $6 million. Well, all of a sudden you got all this money, what are we going to do with it? Well, school districts don't give taxpayers back money. They want to keep it. I mean, that's the nature of school business officials, nothing personal. So they created the bus reserve. The bus reserve fund, I believe, we're working on now. And I think they put $3 to $4 million in that. They did another couple of reserve funds at the same time. You know, prior to that, the 90% that came back went back into the general fund. When they wrote up the proposition like they did here, they stated right in the proposition for the present reserve fund is any state aid comes back, goes back into the reserve fund. Does it? Can anybody, or you don't have to answer me?
First one, no, I can wait until you're
okay. You know, so if 90% goes back, and I realize, like I say, when I started here, they reimbursed it over 2 years, then they kicked it up to 5 years, the reimbursement rates. They spread it out farther because the state, you know, wants to keep the money as long as they can. But in essence, it should be self-perpetuating. You're only losing 10% on your buses, you know. And now I see they want to do away, you want to do away totally with the bus reserve fund. Well, we were told this is a savings account that we can buy our buses. We don't have to put it in the budget every year. Well, now we're going to make the second proposition is to do away with the bus reserve fund, which means all the buses from henceforth are going to have to be paid out of the regular budget. And like I say, what we were told 15 or 20 years ago, and it made common sense, and now we're going to go back and put it in the regular budgets where, we haven't had to for quite a few years.
Right.
Okay.
So you asked a really good question.
Right.
It's simple.
Okay.
In its essence. But it's
I am.
well, no, I mean, your question makes sense, is what I'm trying to say. At face value, it makes total sense. But I think there's more at play here when it comes to the debt we're trying to manage that the district has. So the reserves, there is a plan to move money from that reserve into other reserves. That would be more beneficial. And we did have a return on state aid, all those years ago. So everything you're saying makes sense to me. But I think we have a reserve plan in total, which takes into consideration what you're seeing here in the agenda. But I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna have Alicia address the questions. And your question would be, why are we now funding some of the bus purchase through the general budget,
right,
and not just the reserve? And why are we getting rid of the reserve when we know we got to have buses?
Right.
Okay, so there are answers for all those questions. That makes sense to me. Well, let's see if Alicia can help.
No, right.
Happy to. So next year we're slated to buy 2 buses, which is roughly going to be just under $320,000 minus some trade-in.
Right.
2 buses we're trading in. So the 129 from 148 is the net difference of what we don't expect to receive in transportation aid. So the amount that we're taking to the general fund is the exact amount that we're fully being reimbursed through in transportation aid. So at the end of the day, it doesn't end up being a true general fund expense hitting the budget, because that's our fully reimbursable 90% piece of that cost. The balance of that is what we're taking from the reserve. And why we've changed our reserve strategy a little bit in recent years as we look at our long-range plan moving into the next 10 years is that the way the tax cap formula is structured, if we do anything differently, so the way that the tax cap formula works is that they take all of our debt minus our aid received for our capital projects and our bus purchases. If we don't do it this way and only take out of the reserve the balance of what we need to pay for the buses after our aid, it negatively impacts our calculation. So looking at long-term stability moving into the next 10 years, we've had to switch our strategy a bit as we've analyzed the construct of the tax cap formula more. So as we bring on capital projects and we look at our bus purchasing plan, so this strategy moving forward really maximizes our aid receipt, and it doesn't negatively impact our tax cap calculation. So we don't have huge swings up and down year to year based on the levy that we're going out to our taxpayers.
Negative impact could be seen as subjective, depending on who you're talking to. But what we're trying to do is stabilize the tax levy that we're asking, so we don't come down the road with we need 35%. Right, folks.
We got into 5-6 years ago.
And it all has to do, Dick, with debt and how we run our debt schedule. So from time to time, year to year, I think we're going to have to look at that reserve plan. And I'm sure that not everyone on the board 100% agrees, but this is our financial strategy and as far as liquidating this reserve, there's partly we're playing with the debt schedule and how it impacts the tax levy cap formula, but we're also looking at the future of busing. Down the road too. We thought, oh, we got this reserve. It's really going to help us out in the end. Well, when you pay cash for everything and you have no debt to school district, you can raise less in tax levy. And while that sounds good, maybe to us, it doesn't sound good to taxpayers.
That is the way the state runs
necessarily. Right. But we also don't know the future of busing. And if we are to move to maybe a service, let's say we're not with BOSI's anymore, we might move to a service, and I think this could happen, where they furnish the buses. They start furnishing the mechanics. They start furnishing all of those things that we used to pay for. So again, it plays on the debt schedule, and it's pretty complex. I don't know if you want to see it.
And I would just say with the bus purchase reserve that's noted on the proposition, it uses the balance that's in there currently to redistribute to a new construction reserve, but it doesn't close out that reserve. So that reserve will stay open. It's
Would
just
the money that comes back, that's being reimbursed by the state, go back into there? Or would it just go back into the general fund, so to speak?
So what it does, it comes back, and every year we review the total revenue and state aid we're getting, and that's what you saw like on the revenue slide, and then we'll make decisions of how do we best use those revenues to support next year's budget, and then we make decisions about how to fund the reserves from there. So this.
And if you want to look at the revenue slide again, if we do that again, the revenue has in it the expense-driven aid, it's called. So the aid we're getting back on buses and transportation, that 90%, it appears in that line, and it's part of the state aid package that we rely on. So
It's not
That's
a
the other
separate line item.
construct.
That's the total, all the state aid for whatever they give you.
it does make it back.
Transportation aid is in.
It makes it back
in
into
that
the
number.
general budget. It's a way the budget's funded, but it comes back as state aid in the state aid package.
Thank you for your time.
Would anyone else wish to address the board at this time? Okay. So we'll move on to reports. We'll begin with the superintendent's report.
Okay. So, can everybody hear me okay? All right. We have a couple of nice things on this report. We have a safety award, Utica National School Safety Excellence Award is being presented to the district. I'll be attending and receiving that award for the district in Binghamton at the Utica National Safety Conference. And I want to credit Dave Wood and to all who helped with submitting the information about the good things our schools are doing. It's important to be recognized as a school with excellent safety protocols in place and excellent standing. So it's a reflection of the teamwork here, and we'll certainly share that. And I want to thank Mr. Wood for his leadership. As far as the SRO, I just want to mention a couple of things. It's certainly part of a multi-pronged approach to safety and wellness. We've got wellness teams, we've got the wellness efforts. We have our human resources and employee assistance programs. We're reinstituting the walking program, the open pool program. We have our SEAL team, social, emotional, academic learning team. It's pretty robust, and it's about to get more robust if this budget can pass. We're working with partners, the Johnstown Community Coalition. We have our safety team. We have camera programs, discipline, code of conduct review, trainings, awareness. We're looking at TAP apps, which are a multi-function app which is accessible to everyone in the district to report threats. We're looking at hardening our entrances, our schools. We're looking at a Raptor program, which is a way to do that. We have a regional approach. We now convene with all of our partners, law enforcement included, once a month, is it? Yeah, it feels like once a month. It feels like more sometimes, but it feels like once a month. So there's a lot going on to enhance the safety in our region, especially our school district. As far as the SRO goes, I think there's some reading that I did since our last meeting. I appreciate Rodney's comments. I appreciate everyone's position on this because I think it is a matter of your disposition. It is a matter of your situation, where you find yourself, and also, your point of view and your experience with children. And, this to me, just as a superintendent's soapbox, it's a presence in our school buildings. To me, it's a reassurance of safety around active shooter threats, which have been on a lot of people's minds, as well as a firsthand knowledge of law enforcement, in school buildings. Controversial, yes, but it's meant to address group behavior. It's also meant to improve relationships between schools and the law, hopefully offsetting the pipeline to prison, although there are arguments against that too, strong ones, as a matter of fact. These SROs must be trained in all matters of response to crisis. It's not meant to manage school behavior. It's not meant to be a criminal management system. And we need to be very aware, if we do go with an SRO, of unintended consequences. For example, negative reactions or interactions between youth and police, increases in youth being referred because they've been caught with a weapon, or they've been caught with drugs, or something like that. We need to be conscious of all those things. I just want you to be aware that we're thinking about this. But to have a partner in professional development and safety that is strengthening our safety program, I'd like to focus on resource rather than officer from where I stand. And also, I want to acknowledge that there are implicit biases that everyone carries into their work. Everyone carries into their lives. And law enforcement is no different. So, sensitivity awareness and things are going to be of utmost importance. I'm going to move from that soapbox now and just move on to a few programs and initiatives. An update on ad hoc committee recommendations, especially athletics and transportation. Athletics, the recommendation to me is currently being vetted. I'm not accepting a recommendation from the committee unless everyone agrees in consensus with that recommendation comes. Because I don't want down the road someone to say, oh, well, I was never for that. I literally want to know that that recommendation is everyone's on the committee. So we'll look for that in April at the board level. I'll give you plenty of time to review it. Transportation ad hoc recommendation for the transportation supervisor is something that I've been talking about for months now. I wholeheartedly endorse it. We are doing a preliminary search now, because we're in the planning stages of making this work, if this is what we're doing, moving away from BOCES. That wouldn't happen next year, but we are looking for single route runs, a single start to the day for students and teachers, and we are, if SED allows, looking at central bus stops in our city to pick up students, even if they don't qualify to take the bus. And that's to improve engagement, attendance, and that sort of thing. A quick mention about something I said I would mention, the comprehensive instructional plan. I want to remind you that the board support and the teamwork of this group here is amazing. It has made all the difference in getting us out of CSI status, no longer being a school in need of improvement for now, losing $150,000 a year in support, which is a hard hit. But it's because we have your support, it's because we have the administrative team we have. We've owned our problems. We've looked at attendance. We've looked at academic rigor. We're looking at cohesive and systematic ways of teaching our children. In our methodology, we're looking at SEAL teams addressing everything from suicide prevention to assessment and career exploration. It's not perfect, but we're on the right track, I think. Guaranteed viable curriculum. What we teach is guaranteed for all children. We have an MTSS plan, which is what happens when kids don't learn at that level first. Then we move on to special education. We have an excellent plan, and we're looking at all our plans, our handbooks, and we also offer onboarding and orientation for all of our new staff coming on. Item 3 for me is instructional cabinet work. I would like you to know that we're still spending plenty of time working on learning standards, the science of reading, which you've heard a lot about. Attendance still matters, which is why I think nurse support matters so much. The appropriate SEAL members, like psychologists, counselors, social workers, matter so much. Appropriate opportunities for all of our kids and engagement. So we're only trying to increase student engagement in our clubs and activities. So Mr. Van Ostran's position becomes more important than ever as an engagement specialist. Very important, critical role. I want to commend Director of Curriculum, our principals. I want to commend Nikki as our Director of People Personnel Services, what I call it. All of their efforts have been focused and pretty laser sharp to get us to the place we are now. And it's good improvement. To the point where we're out of that CSI status, and we also are up to a 93% graduation rate, which we should all be very proud of. Coming from, gosh, in 2008, I think a 72% graduation rate. And I know all the various factors, but at the end of the day, as a comparison to other school districts, we're on top, which is really important to know. Budget and personnel, thanks again for coming to see Rick Timms. I gave you the budget presentation tonight. I want you to know we're still leveraging those federal grants. We're thinking about how to continue some of those positions when it runs out. In executive session, I'll fill you in a little bit about the continuation of probation process, which, you know, how we recommend teachers come back for the following year, TAs for the following year, our decisions about tenure. I want to commend Alicia here for leading in the Albany Job Fair, which is April 19th. We have a branding recruitment video in production. Social media is getting ready. OLAS online job fair. to recruit classified and certified folks. I think recruitment's key. We have some good branding, some good exposure out there. Sorry, I've got more. Capital planning, our EPC, I think I went through some of this stuff, but our EPC, we're just finalizing the scope details right now. Our capital outlay means removing fuel tanks at the high school right now, and next year we'll be looking at removing tanks from Knox also. Small capital project, as I said, the field is done. We're now looking at the track. We awarded the bid, so we'll begin the work, and that's scheduled for this summer. The medium capital project, we're also finalizing the scope and schematic design phase right now. Engineers from Tetra Tech meeting with district leaders, making decisions, regular meetings every 2 weeks. Drawings will facilitate a new cost estimation and budget update by Turner, our construction manager. We're on target so far. Large capital project, I have nothing to say about that except to keep thinking about it. Moving plan, we have a timeline for teachers and administration. Looks like teachers late spring, summer, administrative offices back to the old high school in April. Knox instructional furniture has been identified by teachers, has been ordered, and believe it or not, we're not going to start the school year without appropriate furniture in a school building that's been dormant for 3 years. And technology surveys have been done, as I understand it. How are we using our technology? And let's get the technology that's right for our instructional needs. And I think I'll talk about emergency snow days, maybe an executive session, because that could be a matter of negotiation, although it's going really well. A couple of bright spots. Student activities. Elliot Brownell, grade 10, selected by a panel to be featured in SPAC's Festival of Young Artists. 2023 Adirondack Trust Company Festival of Young Artists. The work is featured on their online gallery right now, and then on June 4th, Sunday, at SPAC. So congratulations to Elliot. Beauty and the Beast was a wonderful effort. You know, that came with some heartache, that came with some tribulation, but was just a wonderful show. And it really shows what our kids are capable of, and our teachers and our advisors. The William A. Wright Scholarship, I don't think there's a speech from Nancy tonight, but I know they raised over $10,000 for the Student Scholarship Program. And finally, Odyssey of the Mind held this past Saturday. 7 teams qualified for regional competition. We should be very proud as a district of some of these wonderful programs. So what I have to say is mostly glowing. I'll say the non-glowing stuff in executive session.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Crankshaw. I do not have a board report this evening, and our committee reports also will not happen at both committee meetings listed here for facilities and audit, budget, and finance were canceled on account of meetings and or weather. Our correspondence this week includes Johnstown Public Library request for a basket donation, and I believe that's being coordinated by Jen Sponable. So if you have not already provided a donation to Jen this evening, we can see her. We also have an HFM BOCES annual meeting dinner invitation. Lorraine has been asking, I believe, as we've been coming in to see if we'd be attending. So if you've not spoken to her, please see her at the end of the meeting to let her know your intentions. And then we did receive one letter from the community in regards to the school resource officer topic. I do not have the letter in front of me, but the letter was in opposition to the idea of the SRO, much reflecting Rodney Schuyler's comments earlier this evening. So, moving on, we have a consent agenda, section 6. Oh, just in case. Okay. Section 6, which is mislabeled on the agenda, section 2. Consent agenda, in an effort to expedite the business of the Board of Education, but in no way meant to diminish the importance of each item. A consent agenda may be used for the items in this section. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any one board member. Items not removed will be adopted by general consent without debate. Any removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent agenda or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the board. So this covers effectively the content of page 2 and 3 of your agenda. For consent action business, consent action personnel, and consent action approval of CSE and CPSE and 504 committee minutes. Is there any item you'd like removed from the agenda for specific discussion? Okay. Without any modification of that agenda, I would ask for a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Art, you have a second? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That is 7 and with 1 abstention, 1 absence. Okay. Moving on to page 4 of the agenda. We have a couple action items. First is the second reading and adoption of new or revised policies. These policies have been provided in your board packet for review and include revised policy 6130, evaluation of personnel, revised policy 6420, employee personnel records and release of information, revised policy 6550, leaves of absence, revised policy 7512, student physicals, revised policy 7670, due process complaints, selection and for appointment of impartial hearing officers, and finally revised policy 8450, home, hospital, or institutional instruction, otherwise known as homebound instruction. I'd like a motion to accept this item, the second reading and adoption as presented. Motion? Okay, Art, second, Marge. Okay, any discussion about any of the topics on this? Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. So all those in favor of the revisions as presented, all those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Okay, that is 7 in favor and again 1 abstention. Mr. President? Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we make a consent agenda for the next few items, items 2, 3, and 4, concerning the 2 pilots and the charitable fund that we discussed with the retreat last week. I'll stop there at this point.
I feel as though, how does anybody else feel about that? Anybody have an objection to a consent agenda when we go to those items? I think I don't want to include item 2 in the consent agenda. I'd like to be able to read that specifically as it has to do with our upcoming vote. But in regards to the payment in lieu of taxes, I'd be okay with including that in the consent agenda, the resolution to enter agreement for the charitable fund. So we can include those as a combined item. I think everything else I'd like to go through individually. So, item 2, resolution dated March 16, 2023, of the Board of Education of the City of School District of the City of Johnstown authorizing propositions to be presented to the voters at the annual district meeting. So I'd like be it resolved by the Board of Education of the City School District of the City of Johnstown that the following propositions be presented to the voters at the annual meeting of such voters to be held on Tuesday, May 16, 2023. Proposition number 2, shall the Board of Education of the City School District of the City of Johnstown be authorized to purchase school buses at a cost of not to exceed $320,000 and to finance such purchase with the expenditure of $129,148 from the Capital Bus Purchase Reserve Fund and 2023-2024 budget funds. Proposition number 3, shall the Board of Education be authorized to 1, establish a capital reserve fund known as the 2023 Capital Reserve Fund pursuant to section 3651 of the New York Education Law and in an amount not to exceed $5 million with a probable term of 10 years for the purpose of financing the acquisition of sites, which would be land and or buildings, construction of and general improvement, reconstruction, renovations, or additions to the district's buildings, facilities, and sites, and the acquisition of original furnishings, equipment, including but not limited to technology equipment, machinery, or other apparatus required for the purpose for which such buildings, facilities, and sites are to be used. And 2, transfer the balance on deposit in the bus purchase reserve fund in the amount of $1,145,413 plus interest to the date of transfer to the 2023 Capital Reserve Fund, with such capital reserve fund being funded with first, transfer of the amount on deposit in the bus purchase reserve fund. Second, year-end budget surplus funds known as unassigned fund balance as available. Third, the transfers of excess monies from Board of Education reserves. And fourth, the amounts from budgetary appropriations from time. Be it further resolved that the district clerk is hereby directed to include notice of such propositions in the notice of the annual meeting, and be it further resolved that this resolution takes effect immediately upon its adoption. And I have a motion to accept that resolution. Joel, second. Jen? Any discussion? Okay, appreciate everybody's patience in me reading that. All those in favor? Okay, that is indeed a vote. So the next 2 items involve the resolution authorizing a payment in lieu of taxes agreement between the Greater Johnstown City School District and County Highway Solar 1 LLC and County Highway Solar 2 LLC, as well as the resolution creating a charitable fund. We just agreed to accept that as a consent agenda item. So I would ask for a motion to accept these 2 items. Art? Second. Beth? Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous? Thank you. Moving on to the next item. We have a resolution to enter into an agreement for a school resource officer. Whereas, after review and consideration, the Board of Education of the Greater Johnstown School District acknowledges and accepts the superintendent's recommendation that it would be in the best interest of the school district to enter into an agreement with the City of Johnstown to establish a school resource officer program to provide law enforcement and related services at Greater Johnstown School District buildings. And whereas, in exchange for the City of Johnstown's provision of a school resource officer, the school district shall contribute a portion of the funding in an amount to be determined the cost of employing a school resource officer. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the superintendent of schools is hereby authorized to take such action as is necessary to develop an agreement with the City of Johnstown to establish a school resource officer program to commence in the 2023-24 school year, and be it further resolved, a finalized agreement between the Greater Johnstown School District and the City of Johnstown shall be presented to the Board of Education for review and approval prior to execution by the Board President. Do I have a motion to accept this resolution? Art? Second? Ron? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have discussion.
How long is the agreement?
This agreement would be for the period of a year.
Okay.
Because this would be funded through the ARP grant. It's kind of a pilot fund.
Okay, anybody?
I want to say a couple more things, just to reinforce the point that I brought up throughout this process about the cost of this position. I think that it's not sustainable after this year, after we're done using the grant money for this. Chief Fieldhoe already talked about wanting to add a second officer, and without the funding that we're going to have next year, I think it's going to be a really hard sell to not only keep this position, but add another one. And I also am concerned for the taxpayers of this community that this is potentially adding 2 new police officers to the JPD, because they will replace any officers that have moved over to an SRO, and therefore effectively, double charging us for more police in the area, without the city budget having to take responsibility for that. They're putting all that responsibility on us and kind of selling it as police PR within the school. And I just think, and like Dr. Crankshaw said, in an ideal world, it could prevent the school-to-prison pipeline, but as everybody knows, we don't live in an ideal world, and it's my feeling that it could exacerbate that problem. So that's all I have to say.
But we could get rid of it after a year if we're not happy.
But don't you think it would be harder to get rid of it once it's already in place?
I don't think so. I think we get that well known next time it comes up. Wouldn't we have to vote on that every year?
Depends on what we determine at some point to be the length of any given contract for an SRO officer, because it's done in conjunction with the JPD. So it's not like we're just going to go out and find a new staff person indefinitely. That's part of the bargaining unit here. So this first contract would be for a year.
Right.
If we found it to be unsuccessful based on some metric, then I think we can make a determination next year as a board that it's no longer needed. If we find that there's a reason, there's a benefit, and there's a reason to continue with it, we would need to negotiate a second contract with some duration. And based on whatever degree of success or status that we have with it, with our administration, with our teachers and our students at that time, it could be another 1-year contract or longer.
But again, in the beginning, it's for one person.
One person.
If we think it's no good, we get rid of it. If we think it's good, maybe a possibility of adding another one, we could do that.
Correct. If we can afford it.
If we can afford
So
it.
we'll take a look at the whole budget.
Right.
And, you know, the city has, well, depending on the contract, the city has offered that they would pay the benefits.
So I would add to the conversation that I've done a modest amount of research to see what sort of actual research is out there. And this is by no means intended to be an argument that this is comprehensive. From what I can see, the research that is being done is inconclusive as to the benefits and or the negative impacts. As from what I can tell, they're having trouble controlling for variables in their studies that filters out the noise from the actual impact of what these positions have. There does seem to be one study that suggests, based on an actual comparison within a single school district, the presence of SRO officers in one cohort of the district versus no officers in another cohort did provide a modest benefit in reduction of incidents involving weapons of some kind in school, which brought to mind, in my mind, we don't know if that's just because it's just, you know, easier for the school principal to make a referral, and therefore it turns into an arrest for disturbing the peace, which could just be as simple as a kid disrupting a classroom, or if it's, you know, a response to, you know, the actual officer being in school. Our administrators have indicated that there's been an uptick in, you know, I guess what I would characterize as antisocial behavior in school. That'd be a fair characterization. I don't know, I don't have the ability to discern from the research that's available that it is a guaranteed prevention or pipeline to or from prison. I don't even know if that pipeline exists here and what that would look like. So from my perspective, I think a 1-year trial on this is worth it if we can negotiate a contract with the city that facilitates some parameters in terms of how the SRO officer would A, be trained to conduct themselves in the school setting, and if we can figure out some sort of parameters by which we measure this. I don't know what sort of data we have available in terms of disciplinary issues right now. That can be set as an initial metric. But I think for a year, this is likely something that we need to probably do from my perspective. Yes?
There'd be like training for them so that they would understand that what they might consider on the verge of criminal because a student is misbehaving, and what a teacher might just see a student misbehaving.
So
no conflict over that.
To answer that question, Bev, I think that boils down to a conversation our school district needs to have with police in terms of understanding what sort of incident should rise to a level where police intervention makes sense. I think some school districts deal with very deep-seated social issues in their schools and with actual criminal activity happening. That may be happening here, I don't know. My sense is that it's not happening here as much as it's happening in Miami-Dade County. You know, we are a small upstate rural community that is dealing with different social circumstances than, you know, inner city Miami.
You're good.
Yeah.
There is SRO training we have to go through.
Yes.
As part of the police force.
That's something that the officer would have to have gone through in order to be placed here.
The said the teachers take a lot more, the staff take a lot more abuse than maybe the police would tolerate.
Understood. And I think my interest is, first of all this does is authorize Dr. Crankshaw to negotiate a contract. If we get into a negotiation, we don't like the terms of that contract, we don't have to follow through with it. But this at least authorizes our superintendent to move forward with the negotiation.
Just kind of wondering, now we haven't discussed it, who does this SRO report to? Does he report to the chief of police? Does he report to you? Does he report to Mr. Hale?
Yep. That would all be stated in the contract too. They're definitely a Johnstown Police Department employee. And we have a contract with that department for the employee to work with us. So we would have to have some sort of oversight. Like, I don't want you in the building anymore. You know, that, or we need a new one. You're not working out. You know, that sort of thing. All of that should be in a contract.
And I would also suggest that what we don't want is a school resource officer that only responds to his captain at City Hall when we have an issue where our principal and assistant principal have an active need for them to follow the principal's direction, not the police chief's direction. And so I would want to make sure that gets spelled out in the contract so that we don't get a situation where, you know, he's radioing to, you know, headquarters saying, hey, I think I see some suspicious activity. You want me to, you know, you want to bring some officers over, and our principal doesn't know that any of that's happening, you know?
The point is the strategy of having a resource officer has worked in schools. So there's obviously some successful models out there, but I speak from experience when I say I had an SRO that I had to replace. It just didn't work out. The guy just sat behind a desk all the time. You know, so I'm familiar with that. But can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
If I were to negotiate a contract, I would feel more comfortable if I could have a couple folks from the board take a look at that contract with me and to make sure their voice is heard in that contract. Of course, the board would approve the contract ultimately anyway, but I think it would be a good idea if we chose to go ahead with this, that we had a committee of 3 plus me or something, said we want this in the contract, and if we can't get it, it's a no-go. Maybe that would be a way to go about this, and I'd be willing to do that.
Okay.
Normally, that's not something superintendents would offer, but I think this is a hard decision to make at the moment sometimes.
That's fine. We can talk further about that option. That is not on the table as part of this vote. So I've said what I have to say. Does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, one more question. How would you introduce them to the students, Scott? Or what would you do?
I will assemble the first day of the school year every year, and we have open orientation essentially for all the students.
And you introduce them then?
It'd be very simple to do that, and then what the responsibilities are in the building.
I He's in uniform, or he or she is in uniform, right? No. Or not, not in uniform.
That's something that can be negotiated, but I think what they propose is that they not be in uniform. So we can talk about the nitty-gritty details. For now, this is developed as to authorize Dr. Crankshaw to negotiate an agreement. Any other discussion, questions? Okay, hearing none, then I will call for a vote. Again, as was mentioned at a retreat, you're free to vote your conscience on this. So where it falls, it falls. So I would ask all those in favor of the motion as presented, raise your hand. 4, 5. All those opposed? It's a 5-3 vote. The motion passes. And we will take up the issue of negotiation in future discussions. Okay, so moving on to the next item, we have the memorandum of agreement with the Johnstown Teachers Association. This is for enter into a MOA with the JTA to assign a teacher on special assignment and a full-time dean of students position for the 2023-24 school year. Do I have a motion to accept? Joy, second by Bev. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. We have item number 7, memorandum of agreement with the JTA regarding the 22-23 snow day makeup JTA workday on June 26, 2023. Do I have a motion to accept? Jen, second by Bev. Any discussion?
Just to light me just a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, didn't get this in time, because we're just working on it. But basically, February 28th, we had a snow day. Now, it gets complicated. Students need 180 days of instruction. Teachers, by contract, need more. So we bring teachers in on work days and that sort of thing. This snow day on February 28th still left students with days we could use, which is why we could use one this week, Tuesday. So now students have no more snow days. JTA only had no snow days as of February 28th. So they need to give that back to the district or make it up. So that's what this MOA does. It gives some options and ways that the district finds useful, and the JTA agrees that we can make up that day rather than just come in on June 26th. We're going to use it for professional learning, which we need to do. How many teachers are listed on the letters training alone for tomorrow? 40. How many? 40. So we need hours and hours of teacher training still. So utilize it for that. But and we're also making a major move here. So giving that back to teachers. So that's the idea. And before you ask the question, number 8 is just about the last Tuesday snow day. That one was declared a state of emergency, so it's kind of a wash for everyone at this point. No makeups necessary.
So going back to item 7, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll ask for a vote then. All those in favor of the motion? Unanimous vote. Okay, we'll go right into item 8. This is an MOA with regard to snow emergency on March 14, 2023. Do I have a motion to accept? Art, second by Ron. Any discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, we have action items for personnel. We have a provisional appointment of Robert W. Henry Sr. as the head custodian. And do I have a motion to accept this appointment? Joel, second. Jen? Any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous, thank you. We have a provisional appointment of Adam Harris as custodian. As part of the Civil Service Employees Association Collective Bargaining Agreement, effective March 17th. Do I have a motion to accept this amendment? Well, do I have a second? Beth? Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. We have a retirement of Joanne Smith, Spanish teacher, effective as of the date of June 30th, 2023. Do we have a motion to accept? Ron, do I have a second? Beth? Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd really like to thank her for her time. She was one of the teachers that she taught here, and she left for a while, and then she liked this place so much she wanted to come back, and she was able to come back. So, that doesn't happen too often. Also, I hope that we're right on looking for Spanish teachers, because English teachers are really difficult to get.
For sure, yeah. For recruiting, we have to accept, out of respect, we have to accept the resignation first.
Yeah.
Put it out there.
Yeah, but she's
It's going to be tough. She is. Mr. Longo, when I was in high school,
Right. And she left shortly after, and she came back. She taught for a while.
almost 40 years ago.
Yeah, down in Florida.
Okay, so any further comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. We have some board discussion about the continuation of policy manual audit, section 6000. The month of February was personnel policies, 6110 through 6180. March and April are certified personnel and support staff, policies 6210 and 6320. May and June activities include compensation and benefits, policy 6410 to 6561. Does anybody have any discuss any of those policies that they've been reviewing?
That has to be done online.
No, you have the binder, you should have the binder, but I do believe you can. So you get your paper copies.
I give you the copy.
You have a big purple notebook, and almost every month they give you a stack of papers to trade it and out of the purple notebook.
If you misplace it, look on the high chair. Thank you.
I probably misplaced it. So I stop by and get from you.
Are these all the 6,000?
If you don't want to. No, the big thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I'm just reading.
Okay, just text me.
It's just an audit. It's to make sure that we're familiarizing ourselves with the scope.
Yeah, but we have to go over it.
That's the idea.
No, the supervisor.
Yep. Well, that's something different.
Yes, that's the second item. So,
Talking about self-evaluation.
He wants to know about the self-evaluation. He has to do that online.
Yes, that's.
That has.
which if you go to the email, Lorena provided a link. All you got to do is click the blue link that's in the email, and it'll take you right to it.
We would be happy to help you do that. Not that you need it, but.
Does anybody else have any discussion items about 1 or 2? Okay, so we'll move on. So we have some dates ahead of us. We have April 5th as the HFM BOCES dinner meeting at 6 p.m. at HFM BOCES. Then we have April 18th, which is the Personnel Committee at 5:30 at the Knox Boardroom. April 18th, Audit Budget and Finance Committee at 6:30 at the Knox Boardroom. April 20th, Business Meeting, 6:30 p.m. at the Knox Auditorium. April 26th is the special meeting, 6:30 p.m. Knox Auditorium. That's the vote for special meeting. Yeah. So that's a very quick session. We'll convene, we'll vote. If we have any other lingering items that need to be addressed, we might address them. But the purpose is pretty much for the BOCES vote. Okay, so moving on, we have a possible executive session subject to board approval for the purpose of discussing the employment history of a particular person and for discussing collective negotiations pertaining to JTA, JAA, CSEA, and COA, union pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. So can I have a motion to go into executive session? Art, second? Beth? All those in favor? Okay. We will enter into executive session, and Lorraine will come out of that in the course of time, and we'll communicate that to you from the court. Thanks for coming, everybody.